Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome back from lunch. I hope you got a little bit of fresh air, a little bit of a break, and some delicious food. I think there's some extra back there if anybody still wants a little bite to eat. And our Zoom friends are with us, Todd? There they are. Great. Welcome to our Zoomers, back from wherever you're taking a break, too. Wonderful. So before I start to read these beautiful words that are written right in front of me, I do want to say I can't take credit for a single one of them because my workshop leader, partner, who is actually here with us today, but has lost her voice. And she is, I just want to assure everybody, COVID, RSV, and influenza A and B negative. So not to worry, but she has a cough. So she's not going to be able to participate verbally, but I do want to certainly recognize that Candace has been the primary person who has put this workshop together for you. And then we have met a few times and had some delicious coffee and conversation about it. This workshop, I believe, really has come from some experiences that we've had as NAUA attendees of academy events and other sorts of events where people get into breakout rooms and just feel the need to want to talk about their experience of wherever they are on this journey that's been a little bit difficult for all of us. So that's where Candace really got the idea, maybe we should do a workshop at this first summit. This is not a workshop that's mandatory attendance or even participation. And some of you, in fact, I just had a conversation with somebody during the lunch break who doesn't really want to rehash or review or revisit some of the feelings that they've had. So if that applies to you, feel free to do whatever it is that you need to do to take up some time. You'll have an hour and a half at least until the next workshop comes. But I want to start by reading Candace's words, who was so kind enough to not be able to present them, but she sent them to me via email, and so I've printed them out for the start of this workshop. My name is Candace Schmidt, and with me this morning is Lynn Janishian. That is me. We are both members here in Spokane, and it is so exciting to be with you all as we gather together to share our commitment to liberal religion and its values of freedom, reason, and tolerance. These values are rooted in our commitment to the inherent worth and dignity of every person. All of us here, in some form or another, have experienced the distortion of our Unitarian Universalist religion over the past several years. I am sure many of us have felt a number of strong emotions related to hearing about the Unitarian Universalist Association acting in ways that are opposite to the values we have said we believed in. And many of us have directly experienced in our congregations, ministers, or fellow church members who began to engage in behaviors that at the very least disappointed us and at the most horrified us. These behaviors included the shutting down expressions of legitimate concern and the development of a party line that we were told to follow, and even the public shaming of those who refused to follow the directives of those who incredibly told us that they were acting out of love. The title of our presentation, Losing Your Religion, Moving Toward Wellness, may reflect how many feel about what has transpired over the past several years in our denomination. But I wonder if it is really possible for an overarching organization like the UUA to actually be capable of taking away a person's core sense of values and way of relating to the world around us, whether we describe that way as religious or spiritual or mystic or pragmatic. Because we as Unitarians so value the principle of the free and responsible search for meaning and truth, we are guided daily by what we have been taught from our life experiences, our families and mentors, our compassion, our ability to reason, our love of freedom. No organization can take our chosen way of being away from us. Whether or not any organization has espoused a particular mission statement or an aspirational list of principles, what really matters is that the core values and behaviors of the members reflect a deep sense of humanity with a commitment to the flourishing of all individuals. A quote by Baruch Spinoza says it well. Those who are governed by reason desire nothing for themselves which they do not also desire for the rest of humankind. Saying all this, however, is not to diminish the pain we have felt at witnessing an organization we trusted to support and inspire us, and local churches with which we felt a deep sense of belonging, seemingly all of a sudden turn away from the core values that drew us to Unitarian Universalism in the first place. Experiencing our once safe church home and community became a space that did not feel safe anymore is a real loss for all of us. And for many of us, this loss comes with feelings of confusion, sadness, and also feelings of frustration and anger with those with whom we could not discuss our dismay and the sense of having had the rug pulled out from under us. Grief expert David Kessler says the experience of loss is often followed by feelings of grief, feelings that can seem contradictory to each other: anger, sadness, denial, acceptance. Efforts to somehow forestall the perception of loss and the experience of loss are often engaged in to help us feel anchored when that anchor has been lost. This is the bargaining stage. Kessler says these 5 stages were never meant to be prescriptive or to be used as a way for containing those difficult feelings into a manageable box. He stresses the stages were meant to illustrate the common experience after there has been a loss, and that there is no one way to move through all of these emotions. The 5th stage, acceptance, is when we can concede and yield to the actuality of the loss. Acceptance can come with an increased sense of ease, and it can come with a continuance of painful feelings. Kessler explains that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who first identified the 5 stages in her 1969 book on death and dying, never meant to convey the acceptance stage was the final step in the process. In fact, Kessler, who was a protege and collaborator with Kubler-Ross on later projects, came to understand there was a crucial sixth stage to the healing process, finding meaning. So even when one reaches the stage of acceptance, there is the task of reconfiguring a sense of meaning, a new way of moving through the world that brings us satisfaction, fulfillment, and joy. As Unitarians, we are not unfamiliar with the concept of the search for truth and meaning and how that search can change and evolve through our lives. But before we all rush to this 6th stage of finding new meaning in our lives, it is important to allow ourselves and others the space and time to grapple with what we have lost, to feel and express the emotions that come, to come to understand them, and to support each other in that process. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take some time in the group, in the Zoom meeting. They are going to break out into breakout rooms now, and we're going to do that here within this room. We'd like to keep your groups to be about no bigger than 8, 8 at the most. And you could, if you want to find a space somewhere else in the church just to be able to be in a little bit of a quieter space, you can. What I would suggest is that you don't go too far so we don't have to go running around looking for people. And we will come back together in just a little bit. I do want to go over, we have prepared 3 questions, 3 things that we would like each one of the groups to take some time. Whoever wants to speak can, and it is just as important. Speaking, of course, is just as important as listening or holding space for the person who is speaking. If you do not wish to speak, again, there's no mandatory, you must participate in this. If you just want to listen and hear some others speak, you're welcome to do that too. And again, if you just want to go get a cup of coffee and wander around our beautiful grounds, you're welcome to do that. So I believe we have a slide, Todd, that has the 3 questions that you can speak about in your groups, okay? And that is written really small. What I would encourage any of you to do is pull out your phone now if you're in this room and just take a picture of that, because I don't have papers, and then you can sort of make it a little bit bigger if you need to. And then we can leave the slide up for the Zoom group, and they can also do that if they want to take a picture before they go into their breakout rooms. And that way you'll be able to zoom in and get a bigger font, if you will. But I'll read these discussion questions or discussion topics. There's 3 of them. The first is, discuss your reactions to changes in Unitarian Universalism. What are you currently feeling about these changes? And the third one is, share what has helped you move forward. Okay, I'll read those one more time. Discuss your reaction to the changes in Unitarian Universalism. That could be in the broader sense, or whatever happened within your own congregations, or however it is you want to talk about that. What are you currently feeling about these changes? About an hour. And we're going to focus when we come back to hear answers or responses to number 3. Share what has helped you move forward. That's what we'll do when we come back together. So I don't want to separate you or count you off into different groups, because some people might want to be together with a partner or a friend or a congregate member. So what I would just encourage you to do is move to different parts of the sanctuary and find a group. If there's already 8 people in a group, start another one. Okay. I don't know how many there are of you here, so you can just sort of move to a quieter space, little corner pockets. Or tables, yeah, you can use tables back there.
much.
It was a very open free series. Anything goes, everyone's accepted. What happened to crowd is like, no matter how strange. So he won a pretty traumatizing. And I'm so grateful.
Until they find out that
Todd Phil Smith was the person who taught Todd so how weird synchronicity. I don't understand. I started out in that church on Riverside, ended up here, and then this person was also so profound. Then I go, so unfortunately, I felt solid through hard to
It was so hard for me. Of course, my
I think one of the biggest goals for me here was to discover that our board is working on
So we have a keynote speaker right now for this summit.
No, I mean, the content
Abandoned ship. But luckily our keynote speakers leveled up. We leveled up. John W. is going to be amazing. So he heard what happened and he was like,
Kind of the common story. But is there a difference in size or how teaching from those to church?
It was the humanist after the Second World War, the youth getting to rural areas. A lot of people were joining so they used the term fellowship. Many of these fellowships didn't produce ministers. So that's just a 20-year.
Yeah, no, my question was.
Just recently found out that we were more.
Literally, maybe we're not done again. Oh, you're not master. I thought you were. I got. So, but you didn't go.
Okay, guys, if you want to finish up the last few minutes of thoughts there and come on back to your seats in the sanctuary. Todd, can they hear me on Zoom? They can.
By Eric Hoffer.
Hi, Zoom friends. It looks like Alan.
I
Situations,
did not hear the two books because we were interrupted by the main session. Could you repeat them, please?
I'm putting them in the chat. The True Believer by Eric Hoffer and The Cult of Trump by Hassan.
Great books there. Alan, I'm not sure if you're our Zoom host or whoever's bringing people back from the breakout rooms, if they could all come on back, and people are making their way back into the sanctuary, and we'll finish up in about 15, we're going to take about 15 minutes here.
Okay, so
They'll start to trickle in. Whoops.
Counting down, it's about 100 seconds right now.
Oh, 100 seconds. Okay. Well, while we're waiting for our Zoom friends to join us again, let me make a quick announcement for those of you who are here and got a packet from your check-in. Just wanted to make sure that you notice inside of that packet there is a paper copy of an evaluation of the summit. And was it Judy? Who asked me to? Joyce. Joyce asked me to make sure that, there she is. Joyce asked me to make sure that you take some time, please, to fill that evaluation out. It'll be super helpful for us moving forward for next year's yearly summit, which I'm sure you already have your tickets for, right?
Where's it gonna be?
Right, all the questions. Pardon me? Joyce, do you want them to, or you can bring it to church on Sunday, or where do you want them to turn that in?
So you can turn it with what's at the table tomorrow, perhaps in the afternoon, or church on Sunday. There is also an online Google form, if you're more comfortable with that, which we can send out afterwards. So you'd be like, make sure you know your Google.
Yep. So you can, there's a little place back there on the table that you can set that evaluation form here, right here in the church, or you can you can do it Sunday. You can do it today or tomorrow or Sunday. And you can also fill that form out online, which I'm sure our Zoom attendees, people who have attended online, will be receiving it that way. But so will you. An email is going to go out with an evaluation form too.
Would it be adverse if I did it last night while I was waiting to get some sleep?
Okay, well, let's go ahead and take our last few minutes together. I did want to just reiterate a couple of points about this particular workshop. First of all, I don't need to tell you that no single workshop is going to bring resolution to some of these very difficult emotions that many of us are feeling, have been feeling, or have maybe moved through. So, darn it, we can't fix everything in a single workshop. These are ongoing conversations, and we are having them in our relationships, in our homes, with our friends, people who we know, people we don't know all that well. They're continuing within our congregations, and certainly they're continuing, hopefully, within relationships that you're having when you're meeting people from the NAUA. I think one of the best things that we can do with each other and for each other is remember that no matter where you are on this journey as you're moving your way through some of these important and difficult emotions, the person that you are having a conversation with may not be in the exact same place. And so patience and kindness when you find yourself in a conversation with somebody who is in a different place is probably the best approach in trying to maintain a relationship moving forward and when you're having those difficult times. So right now what we want to do is take a few minutes for anybody who's willing or wanting to. Ron has a microphone for people here, and then we'll take a few moments to listen to our online attendees, our Zoom attendees. But what we want to focus on is anybody who has an idea of how they have moved forward in this process. So we're not going to spend too much time talking about the first two questions, just the last one, which was share an idea or an approach you've had in moving forward in this process. So let's start here in the room, and then we'll go back and forth. Microphone here.
And we got, hey, I'm here, right?
Yeah?
The group I was with, we did get around to the third question. It's easy to spend a lot of time with the first two. But what the little concluding remarks included the fact that when a split occurred in a congregation, whether it was the congregation that remained or the congregation that left, the group that left or the group that stayed, the group that has these feelings in favor of NAUA and has trouble with UUA come together in a manner in which they found favorable that created more community than existed in the previous situation. The other thing was that simply getting involved with NAUA made a big difference to people because it was positive. It was forward-looking and forward-thinking, and there was a ray of hope. And those are the two main points that came out of our group.
Thank you, Tom. We're going to take one more here. Frank's got something he's going to say, and then we'll go to Zoom.
Yep, it's working. I don't want to undermine or trivialize the sufferings that people have gone through in terms of feeling loss.
Hold it real close to your mouth.
But I don't feel I lost my religion. I feel I gained it. The transition that I had was writing the book with Jay. He made up for all the loss of the social loss of the church, again, a good friend. And as I said in the book, I didn't know really the depth of my own commitment to liberal religion until I had to defend it.
Nice. Thank you, Frank. All right, let's go to Zoom, and it looks like I won't be able to see the name. So, Alan, if you could call on somebody there.
Well, I think, at least on my screen, I was the first one with the hand up, and then I can call on the other two.
Sure.
So anyway, the group we were in, we kind of identified about three things in connection with that third point, and the things that we thought was helped in moving forward. The first thing was to stand up for our values, and which meant, it might be, if you want to say, join together others who stood for, traditional liberal values, either in our own congregation or nationwide. So you might consider yourself a dissident group nationwide, or you might be a minority or a majority in your own congregation. It varies depending on situation. But you were standing up against a lot of the trends and practices of the current UUA. So that was one thing. The second thing is that individuals, at least not everybody, but at least some individuals found that if their particular UU church was very problematic with regard to being dogmatic, that they might either have moved to another UU congregation that was not dogmatic and was still practicing liberal religion, or either in person in their metropolitan area, or have moved to joining online a congregation that was distant from them, but still seemed to be adhering to more traditional UU values. So that was another thing that people brought up. And the third thing was that people found some strength and solace in just studying the issue more, reading books, these kinds of dogmatic movements, and so they can kind of. Next, we had Julie up there.
Okay,
Okay, I put a couple of books in there. Oh, let me put my video on now. Put a couple of books in there that helped me. And like Reverend Eckloff, I do think that the UUA has become a cult. Books, The Gadfly, Papers in the Gadfly Affair, described his experience, which was very much like things that I and other people in True Believer by Eric Hoffer and The Cult of Trump by Stephen Hesson. And I think Stephen was supposed to be what's going on in UUism. And also my local dissenters group separated from the church. And that was very helpful because they were always being the leaders of the church or the congregation I was in were always being in another church part-time so that we could do our activities without interference. And I have put in the chat the URL for our local dissenters group in Port Townsend, which to my knowledge is the largest local dissenters group from UUism. It's called the Salish Sea Fellowship. It's at salishseafellowship.org.
Great. And for those of you here in the room, that's you, Ron, right? That's your group? Yeah, Ron and Joyce. So we'll get that to you from here if you're right here in the room. Hang on, Zoomers. We're going to take another one from the room in Spokane, and we'll come back to you.
Okay, is this on? This is on.
I had a pen, so this is from the group. One of them is, as someone called it, chasing community. That community is so important, especially in your case, because you have young children too. And so just not willing to give up on that, but to keep trying to build it. And taking the long view, that what we're going through now, it's the pits, but if you take the longer view and we keep working, what can we build to make us stronger or newer or whatever? And coming to this conference, to be able to see you all and face to face and to find that there are other people. None of us are alone in this. We're all over the countries, and so there's strength in that. And then finally, joining other groups. Some people have joined like UMIAC, or certain other groups out there that are working on aspects of it. And so that's been very helpful and also keep us coming.
Another one in the room? Anybody else here in the room want to? It doesn't have to be a group report out. It can be something you're doing personally as an individual. Yeah?
With a shameless plug here. So attend the next month's NAUA Summit because I'll be speaking there.
Oh, Academy event? Academy.
I'm sorry, NAU Academy, not Summit. But basically it comes down to finding other groups that share your values, and I will talk about one of them.
Great, thank you. It does help to feel like you're not alone in this. How about back on Zoom again? Somebody has their hand up there.
That would be me, Matthew Shear of Lowell, Massachusetts. I guess at this point, a lot of what I was going to say has been said, but I do want to give thanks not only to NAUA, but to Frank and Jay for the Fifth Principle Project, and UMIAC, which I am a board member. And we have our third Wednesday of the month Vespers service. If you go to uumuac.org, you can find all that information. Past ones are on Zoom, or on YouTube rather. And I would just encourage everyone, even if you don't have a local group, make contacts with everyone you meet here, give them a call, send them an email. We have to support each other. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, making contacts. Great opportunity this weekend. Oh, I think we have one more up here. We have a couple more minutes, so.
Yeah, I've been working at this in lots of different ways, and one is just coming here on Sundays for the services because I don't enjoy going to my old church that I went to for 28 years, but I find this works. And going to lots of the workshops and the services with NAUA. And I decided to agree to be president of my local garden club.
and it's a really nice group. So sometimes it's just getting outside of church and finding other things. And so I'm doing a lot more with music. And and then I discovered another group called WOOF, Women's Liberation Front. Doesn't let guys in, I don't think, but anyways. So there's lots of other groups out there, as people have said. So finding people who are like-minded and doing stuff with them.
Sounds like the urban groups needs to get woke.
Another hand up on Zoom. Okay.
Me?
Yeah, sure.
Hi. My name's Robin Edgar. I'm an excommunicated Unitarian. No, seriously. I got thrown out of my church. I've even been accused of violating Canada's blasphemy law by the UUA. And Alan said that, one of his ways of moving forward was stand up for our values. And I've certainly been standing up for my own personal values for quite some time, but I believe that I've been standing up for the claimed values of Unitarian Universalism since, I got into a conflict situation with the UUA. I was constantly pointing out to them how they're out of alignment with the claimed principles and purposes of Unitarian Universalism, not to mention a former tradition of opposing blasphemy laws that lasted for about 3 centuries until they accused me of blasphemy. So I think just standing up for yourself and standing up for the traditional values of Unitarian Universalism as expressed in the 7 principles, the 6 purposes, and older, claimed principles and ideals and so on has certainly been good for me, and I think it'd be good for most members of the NAUA.
Thank you. Thank you. I see one more hand up on Zoom. I think it says Terry.
Hi.
Oh, you muted yourself.
Unmuted.
There you go. No.
First of all, I'd like to say hi to Frank and Jay. Thank you for all you're doing, and everybody else too. And I wish I was there. And I want to thank them for Used to Be UU, that really did a lot for bringing me up to speed on where we were as a religion. What I've gotten a lot of support out from lately is going to different churches in my county. My goal is to go to every church in the county, which is going to be so fun. I still go to 3 different UU churches, 2 in Florida and 1 in Georgia. I love all of these churches also. But what other people were saying, which is, just get out there, stay busy, do interesting things. And thanks again to everybody who's helping to put this shindig together.
Great. Thank you. Any last comment? Oh, yeah.
Terry was part of the church in Jacksonville.
Terry's part of the church in Jacksonville.
She was very, very big part of the
Yeah, hold on, Penny. Let me bring you the mic.
No.
It's okay.
Terry, surprise, this is Penny.
Hi.
I just wanted to mention that Terry was also a member of the UU Church in Jacksonville. Was a big part of.
Go ahead.
Was a big part of the task force, for the Article 2 task force that my church participated in before GA and.
Great. Yeah. Keep your eye on that Jacksonville congregation. Okay, unless anybody here has one last little thing they want to say about moving forward, I just want to close. Candace found a lovely quote here from Anne Frank, so I'll close with her words, and we'll take a little break, and then Todd will be the facilitator of our next workshop. Anne Frank says, "I don't think of all the misery, but of all the beauty that remains." All right, go take a break and come back at 4.
doesn't it? Yeah. Well, thank you all for sticking around for the final presentation of this evening. Got another big day ahead of us tomorrow, but I appreciate you being here. So we're going to be talking about a process for becoming better thinkers. And at the risk of creating a false duality between feelings and thinking, which if you think that they're opposites, I don't believe they are. I'll argue that they're not. But at the risk of doing so anyway, before we talk about reason, how does it feel to you to be amongst you-yous where it feels like what it's supposed to feel like to be among you-yous? This is ultimately why NAUA exists. However we can do it, we are going to try to create the connections where we know wherever we are on this planet, in this world, that we are part of something larger than ourselves, larger than our own communities, and that we can support one another, and that we are connected. And we'll come together in different ways, in many ways, but this is why we come together. And this is the sort of feeling that I have traditionally felt, like many of us, when I have gone to Unitarian Universalist gatherings, and it feels so good. So I'll talk, let's see, good, you have me up there, all right. So Todd, when the slideshow starts, if it's all right, I'll just say next, that kind of thing. It's not going to be too difficult. But some preliminary comments. First, I want to, for our friends on Zoom, I want to be sure and thank the Zoom volunteers who have agreed to spend a lot of time this weekend hosting the Zoom meetings so that folks can participate as fully as possible in the various offerings that we have. So we're so glad always to be able to transcend the limitations of location with technology and being able to include people from other places who might not be able to travel. So those of you who are Zooming with us, and I know some people that are live streaming with us as well, we can't engage back and forth, but it's great to have all of you, and you are just as much a part of this and just as appreciated. So thanks to those of you who have worked to make this as successful as possible. By the way, I do understand there was a minor hiccup with the URL that went out for the Zoom meeting, and just a handful of you spent a little bit of time frustrated trying to figure out where the hell everybody was. By the way, Unitarians can say hell, right? I mean, I love it because you can tell someone to go to hell. You can say, God damn you. I mean, it's okay because everybody knows we don't mean it, right? We can't possibly mean it. So those are appropriate curse words. So if you were saying, they go to hell or God damn it, we're sorry. We really are. But I'm glad that everybody has made it now, and thanks for sticking with us. So it's a funny thing, anytime reason throughout history has been promoted as an ideal, as a benefit, as something that should be uplifted as important, it has gotten immediate pushback from folks who talk about its limitations and the importance of emotions, which sometimes they use synonymously with the word spirituality or something of the like. Again, I would say that thoughts and feelings are not separate events myself, but this duality really is not healthy for us. We should stop thinking if somebody's intelligent, they must not be very emotionally sound, or if they are very emotional, they must not be very smart. What I would say is that resistance is really because what reason does is it causes us to check ourselves. right? It's really, we want to be reasonable, we want to be intelligent, we want to be logical for our own sense of integrity. So we don't just believe whatever the hell we feel like believing, because that's the problem. So what I would say to those who start to, think about reason and its shortfalls, of course it's got shortfalls. By the way, logic can't tell you what's true. Logic isn't even concerned with what's true. It's concerned with form. Is there sound reason to believe that something might be true? That's all it does for us. It's a tool. But I would ask you, is the problem with the world really today? Or is the problem today with the world? You know where I'm going with this. Is it that people are too rational? Is it that people are thinking too much? Are they that people are overthinking things? Is that the problem that we're facing? It's not, right? It's not. So the animosity that naturally emerges often towards somebody who says, let's talk about reason. Think about that. Of course, like anything, it's not perfect. Truth is an epistemological problem, not a logical problem. Logic doesn't make us certain. If we feel like we're certain of something because a deductive argument made it sound like it was logical, that doesn't mean it's true. We understand our limitations of understanding. Logic is a tool. So I want to do one little bit of bragging on myself before we go to the slideshow, because we've been doing this Kurkara group now for I think 8 years. Actually, Dr. Schmidt and I worked on it initially to put together the format that we have, and it was shortly after Trump was elected. I'd been saying for years that if we could just teach kids critical thinking, how to think, at least as much as what to think, we would probably solve most of the world's problems in a generation, because we'd have a generation of people who question things, people who do the thing we ruin in kids when we tell them, don't question me, right? Don't ask me why. We create people who keep asking why. They never lose that childish instinct to wonder and to ask why. And after Donald Trump was elected, I said, I've got to do something. We've got to create some sort of system where people can become better thinkers. And that's what led to the Kurkara Dojo. Now, we met just Tuesday. One of the fun things we do from time to time since ChatGPT, the advent of ChatGPT, is invite it into our work sometimes. And the last couple of times we met, we analyzed the two presidential debates between Harris and Trump, and then between the vice presidential candidates. And it's been fun because the part of the process is owning our biases. The first thing we do is own our biases. So, if you're in support of Harris versus Trump, say, for example, and you listen to these debates, you're going to walk away saying, well, wow, Harris really won that one. And she did. By certain standards, right? By certain measures or metrics, she did. If the metric was to help to make Donald Trump look small and petty and stupid, then she did a good job of baiting him and dragging him into that thing. But if the measure is logic, what was the logic of her presentation? Of course, those who were for her would say, "Well, yeah, she was certainly far more logical, and so than Trump." But when you just sort of cut and paste those comments into ChatGPT and say, "Please evaluate what each said for its logical soundness and for the number of fallacies," you will find there was not much light between them. not much light between them. And we did the same thing with the two between Walls and Vance just this week. And again, all of us, of course, felt, and myself included, that Walls had really done a much better job when it came to being factual. Now, ChatGPT analyzed them, and again, they both committed very similar fallacies and had about the same quality of logic to their arguments. But one thing about, I thought that Walls had done a bit of a better job because he actually did offer some facts or sound reasons for some of his arguments. And one of the fallacies is what you call appeal to authority. The appeal to authority is where you say this is sound thinking because this authority told me that it's true. Now, sometimes authorities are okay if it's their field. I never like to go by authority because everything is theory, right? So why we always say get a second opinion from even a doctor, right? Everything is theory. So it's not a great strength for an argument to have an authority, but if you do, it needs to be somebody in the field, somebody that has some sort of connection. And ChatGPT says, well, this was an appeal to authority. When Walls referred to prime staff members, of his cabinet who had basically renounced him. And I immediately, when I saw it, I said, that's a strange, I don't think that's a fallacy. I'm going to have to ask it. After our dialogue, I'll ask why it's chosen that as a fallacy. It doesn't make sense to me because those were people who had firsthand knowledge of Trump's behavior, military advisors, chief of staff, that kind of thing. That's a pretty good argument when those folks are saying you're unfit because they had firsthand experience. Wouldn't be an appeal to an inaccurate authority, right? So I thought that was strange, and I said, must have a very rigid interpretation. So anyway, after we dialogued, I know this is getting me a long story, and I said, so why, I'm a little confused about you saying that this was a fallacy, an appeal to authority, when these individuals Walls mentioned had firsthand knowledge of Trump, and immediately get these red letters and says, this question looks like it violates our safety policy. It's like, wow, what did I say? And we all looked at it, we couldn't figure it out. And so I said, how so? And all of a sudden it gives this big, lengthy apology for being mistaken about this. Yes, you're right. Of course, that was not a fallacy, and this does at least this portion of the conversation makes Walls perhaps the winner of this particular question. And I have to say, I just did myself. I was like so pumped. It was like beating Big Blue or Watson or something, Jeopardy or chess. I was like, I beat ChatGPT. So I really like logic, and I have a good understanding of it, and enough to perhaps occasionally befuddle ChatGPT. So let's go ahead and look at our slideshow, if we will. Next slide, please. And then just push it again. These are animated titles, so they'll come up. So hopefully you can see that. It was bigger on my screen when I made it, but it's Kurtkara Dojo, The Art of Being Thoughtful. So what does this mean? Todd, if you'll go to the next slide. And then press it one time, if you will. And we're going to, I'll read the text in case you can't see it. Said the scarecrow, I shall ask for brains instead of a heart, for a fool would not know what to do with a heart if he had one. I shall take the heart, returned the Tin Woodman, for brains do not make one happy, and happiness is the best thing in the world. Dorothy did not say anything, for she was puzzled to know which of her two friends was right. Of course, from The Wizard of Oz. And again, this really represents this sort of sense of duality between thinking and feeling. And at Kudkara, we really have come to discover that they are part of the same phenomenon. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But I think this is the journey all of us are on in life, is this journey that Dorothy's on, trying to figure out what should guide me. How do I know? Do I trust my instincts, my intuition, my feeling, or do I think it through? And Dorothy wisely doesn't know, and she takes both along. That's the journey. Okay, next slide, please, Todd. So the meaning of Kudkara, there you see an image of a heart and head just about to connect to each other. Next, or if you'll just tap it. So this word is from the Proto-Indo-European language. It is not a Proto-Indo-European word. It's a hybridization of two Proto-Indo-European words that we created ourselves. So if you think of Kurd, or as in core, right? It's the word for heart. Kurd, kernel, core. This is, and the Proto-Indo-European language, of course, is connected to most of the language and some main languages that are still active today. So a lot of these roots are found in every language. So Kurd or Kudkara, Kara is C-E-R-A. If you'll make the next, there you go. One more. So it's the root of words like cerebral or cerebellum. So when we say Kudkara, we're talking about the heart and the head. One more bump there. So yeah, Kudkara equals heart and head. That's the meaning of the word. Now, if you want to remember how to say it, and people say Kurdsara, Kurdsara, what is it? How do you say it again? I want everybody to open the palm of your hand. And now you know what cottage cheese looks like, right? I want you to imagine that you took just one little curd of cottage cheese and put it on the palm of your hand right now. Now push it in there. You got it all over your palm of your hand. You've got curd spread all over your hand. Okay? And now you're going out to get in your car. You forgot about this curd spread on your hand. You open the door, and now you've got cheese all over the handle of your car. And you go, there you go, Kudkara. That's a way to remember it, okay? You won't forget now, Kudkara. And you'll sound really smart when you see this word and you say that, because it doesn't look like that. Okay, so next slide, please. The meaning of dojo. Why do we call it a dojo? A Kudkara dojo. So dojo, and you can go ahead and click there you go. It's a Japanese word for place of the way, or place of practice, or place of art, way of the art. And that's pretty much what it is. This is a place for practicing something. It is not a technique that requires serial learning, right? Or sequential learning, I should say, where you can't miss the first part of it, or you will not be able to move on. It's practicing the same thing over and over. Simple practice over and over. So it's a Kudkara dojo, and if you'll click the next slide. So the word thoughtful is the perfect word. It's a perfect English hybridization of the word Kudkara, because it also reflects heart and head, right? If we say somebody is thoughtful, we might say that they reason well, or we might say that they're very kind-hearted. So it's a great word for the practice that we do. So go ahead, Todd, please. So the Kudkara dojo is the place where we practice the art of being thoughtful, which includes heart and head. So that's the background here, and if you'll go to the next slide. The art of being thoughtful, next tap please, is the practice of logic and emotional intelligence. That's really what we're looking at. How to be more rational, but also how to be more emotionally intelligent. So if you'll click the next slide, and there we go. One more. There's a bunch of different emotional states. You could probably tell what those are if we had time. So emotional intelligence, some of you know, how many of you have heard of emotional intelligence? I think just about everybody has these days. Really was made famous in 1994. I think it was first mentioned in like around 64, but it became popular because of the book on the subject by Daniel Goleman in 1994. So it's not been around that long. Right? Next slide, please. Or next click, thank you. Emotional intelligence is the ability to manage our emotions well, essentially, right? To move through life and manage our emotions and to be aware and sensitive to the emotional states of others in a productive way. That's what emotional intelligence means. And there are really only... It's a pretty simple idea. There's about 5 states. The key components are self-awareness, where you're in the midst of an emotion and you're aware that you're having that emotion. Okay? You might be angry. You might be sad. I remember, for example, when I was about to give my books away at the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly, I was scared. Now, what do you do when you're scared? What is the instinct when you're scared? Run, don't do it. Right, so it takes a little bit of intelligence to say, okay, I'm scared. But this still has to be done. I'm not acting adversely to my emotion, I'm just not letting my emotion take over here. And the same thing happened when all hell broke loose and people immediately asked, would you have done this if you'd have known this was going to happen? And I knew how I was feeling in that moment, and I said, please ask me in a month. Right? So that's emotional intelligence. You're aware you're having these emotions and they can impact you. Not that I'm always emotionally intelligent. I'm not, especially when I'm driving. Yeah. But so self-awareness and then self-control, sometimes it's called self-modulation, is just being able to shift out of that state. Right, so one of the things we do a lot, Lynn, who leads that section of our closing section of our work, usually plays a song. Maybe gives us some insight from something she's read about emotions, but then plays a song, and the music can shift us, can shift our state. Another thing is just to breathe. And that's an anger management thing, right? You shift from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system, and the sympathetic nervous system can't function when the parasympathetic nervous system has been engaged. So just taking deep breaths is a way to self-regulate. And then the social skills and the empathy. So that's where you sort of get away from your own emotional state and are able to connect well with others. And we're finding that a lot of, since Goldman's book came out, that even a lot of companies now are hiring based more on emotional intelligence than they are somebody's knowledge or skill level, because often people that can be the best at their work are the worst at relating to people. And so you want to get people who maybe aren't as sharp when it comes to skill, but know how to connect with others. And so being aware and sympathetic and empathetic is a part of it. Okay, let's look at some of the downside of emotional intelligence. If you'll click, the challenges to it. Another click, Todd. Again, it's relatively young. So the theory is there. We understand what emotional intelligence is, but there's not a lot of exercises to help us develop our emotional intelligence. We've kind of had to figure that out for ourselves. What are some of the basic things we can do to improve on these 5 different types of emotional intelligence? It's again, so for this reason, it's just more theoretical than it is practical. If you want to become emotionally intelligent, that's harder to do. There's not necessarily a book out there that says, here's what you have to do. You have to develop that yourself. So that's been a bit of a challenge for us. Next, so formal logic has been around a lot longer, at least since 2,300 years ago. when it was developed by the great philosopher Aristotle. Next bump, please. And therefore, it is an extraordinarily well-developed discipline. It's had a lot of time to evolve and to be added to, and for us to understand. It's changed a little bit over the years, which is why we have Boolean logic, which helped create, the ability to invent computers. So it's going to be very practical if you'll do the next bump. Extremely practical for those who know how to use it. So let's look at its challenges. Go ahead. It's extraordinarily complicated and hard to learn. You got emotional intelligence theory down pretty quickly, right? Well, how about the 12 valid moods of deductive logic, the basic forms that allow you to determine if something is logical or not. What's the difference between deductive logic and inductive logic? And I mean, it's just imagining forms, right? So, for example, let's go ahead. Yeah, if you did know those forms and you wanted to translate an argument into logical form, you'd have to get a piece of paper and you literally would look for these different terms, and you'd decide if it's going to be a hypothetical argument or a deductive argument, and it takes forever. So we can't engage in conversations and read things and determine exactly if their form is logical or not. It would be just impractical. And yet I have constantly said, if we could teach people logic, we'd be better. And I think, why do I say that? I don't even do this. Right? That's all I do. And I wouldn't do much of it at that. So it's not widely known in practice. It's not widely understood by many people, even if they have taken a logic course. So next slide, please. This, for example, these 4 different arguments: all men are mortal, Socrates was a man, therefore Socrates was mortal, AAA, all M is P, all M is S, all S is P. And unfortunately, it looks like the drawings that I had put in the Venn diagram didn't make it to the slide. Nevertheless, those are 4 different ways of saying the same thing. Now, you don't have to learn that. I'm not going to talk to you about what any of that means, but you get my point, right? How can logic do us any good if we have to understand this new language? Okay, next slide. So, Kierkegaardian premises are one that everyone has thoughts and feelings. Is there anybody here who's never had a thought? Right, okay. We've got one. If you stop and think about that, I think you'll find it's not true. Has anybody ever here had an emotion, a feeling? Yes. We're thinkers and we're feelers, period. Don't fall into the duality trap. Next premise, please. Thoughts and feelings are 2 expressions of the same experience. Now, the way I really came to believe this is true after 8 years is we often do check-ins. Well, we always do check-ins at the start of our group. How are you feeling? It's a part of the emotional awareness, right? To be able to, and there's really very few primary emotions, so you should be able to say, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling joy, I'm feeling surprise, I'm feeling afraid. But we can't get to that emotion unless we can tell a story. We don't even know what we're feeling until we look inside and that story comes out and tells us what we're feeling. How many times have you heard a thought where it has provoked a feeling? Made you angry, made you sad, made you upset, made you happy. Right? Thoughts and feelings are part of the same process. Thoughts cause us to feel, and feelings cause us to create thoughts that justify the feeling, that explain the feeling. That's why so many people don't like logic, method. And this is the take home here, okay? We're going to get into the process now. What is the Kirkaran method of logic? Now think about it. We had this problem with emotional intelligence where we've got this wonderfully rather simple to understand, very few ways to put it into practice. Logic is this 20 into a way that it's practical so that you don't have to understand that weird language to be logical. So I asked myself, well, what is it? Why do I keep saying that logic is going to save us? That logic is so important in our lives? How am I using it in a way that's beneficial? And this is the process. It's a 4-step process. It's very easy to remember. So the first thing we do is just own our biases. Hard to do. When you say to someone, when you bring in an argument or an article or something and someone reads it, you say, now what are your biases? The first thing we want to do is tell you what's wrong with the argument or what's right with it. It's really hard to get to that raw spot where you can just say, I hate that idea. I couldn't disagree more. That's the heart and head, right? Or, oh, I love it. Couldn't agree more. That's enough. Because when we own our biases, then we're like the silent witness, right? We're stepping back for just a step back from where we're at with the argument, or with what we're being asked to believe. We're stepping back just a little bit and saying, I think I'm going to be prone to agreeing that this is true, whether it is or not. Or I think I'm going to want to believe that this is completely wrong, whether it is or not, because my biases have already decided what I want to believe. So that's the first thing. Become the silent witness of yourself by saying, what are my biases? What do I want to believe or disbelieve here? First question. The second question is, what's the what? What's the what? Now, if somebody presents an argument to you, and we are in what I call a noosphere, we are in a sea, an ocean of thoughts every day. We don't notice it most of the time. But in this ocean, there's constantly schools of thought going by. There's bright, brilliant thoughts. There's scary thoughts. There's angry thoughts that want to devour us in our environment. And we're constantly having an emotional response to those, going about our day in this noosphere, not even realizing that our emotions are being plucked like an out-of-control guitar or something. Right. So when we say what's the what, we're really stopping to ask ourselves, what is the point? What am I being asked to accept as true? Or you may get a whole lot of verbiage, but what is the point of that verbiage? What is the one thing or the main thing that it's supposedly supporting here? So in logic, you'd say, what's the conclusion? And the next question is similar. It's what's the why? To me, this is among the most important for the reasons I mentioned earlier, that we lose our whys when we're children, but we're naturally curious. The why, it would be, what are your reasons? What are your premises? And this is the greatest, I think, the greatest problem of our day. We don't ask why. Remember the old NPR bit they were doing a few years ago called This I Believe, where they were going around asking different people, this I believe, and then you'd have different people on the radio saying, I believe. And I was like, why do you believe that? I don't care what you believe. If I don't know why you believe it, it's just an opinion. And maybe an unsound opinion. You hear journalists say, they report on what somebody said. We're obsessed with what people say. Ooh, he said this. Ooh, he said that. Oh, she said this. She said that. Well, so what? Why did they say it? Right? You don't condemn somebody just because they said something that your biases prevent you from agreeing with. You ask why they say it. Why did they say it? We've got to get to that point. If there's no reasons, then it's unreasonable. You can't have a logical argument without premises. Now think about it. If more people would just do this, if most people just did step one, think about the world we would have if most people in the world were a part of a culture where you had been encouraged to step back and say, wait a minute, what do I feel about this? What do I think about it? What are my biases? It opens you immediately to the possibility that you might be wrong and you should listen. If we just ask this question, why? We've become twice the thinkers that we are right now. We're discouraged though, right? Even society, like a bad parent says, don't you ask me why. Because I said so. Right, we've got to keep asking why. And then finally, does the what follow from the why? Right? It's got to be a good question. I remember when one of my nephews was very young and was going to have his first vote, he was going to vote for Donald Trump. And you asked him why? Because he's funny. That's a reason. But it's not a sound argument, right? Somebody's shouldn't be president because they're funny. They should be president for other reasons, but not because they're funny. So that's an example of do the reasons actually support the conclusions? Does the what follow from the why? That's it. That's the process. What are your biases? What's the what? What's the why? Does the what follow from the why? Now, wake up. We're going to put this into practice right now. It's going to become suddenly more engaging than the theory that I just gave you. So let's go to our next slide. So this is very common. And by the way, I'd recommend you practice this at home or with others this way. This is a letter to an editor. And I like using letters to the editor because they're brief and they almost always are trying to make a point. The question is, do they give reasons for those points? Do they give sound reasons for those points? If not, if there are no reasons in it, and sometimes there aren't, sometimes it's what I call a laundry list. Someone's just making a list of statements that are disconnected. So you don't have an argument. They're really just giving their opinions, and it's worth what it's worth. So this is one where we're going to work the process. Okay, so I'm going to read it. It was in response to a letter called "To Persuade a Reluctant Tap." I can't even read that. Oh yeah, thank you. So yeah, to persuade a reluctant tween to read, try cash. So we don't really have to know much more about the article in question at this point. We understand it was an article about somebody trying to get their teenager to read more by paying them. Okay? And remember that this is not about what's not said. That's a common fallacy where people will do red herrings or straw men by trying to complain about what somebody didn't say. That was the first thing about my book. People, you didn't say this, you didn't say this. You didn't. That's right, I didn't say that. Got any problems with what I did say? Okay. Yeah. While I appreciate Miss Silkoff's desire to have her daughter experience the joys of reading, I seriously doubt that paying her daughter to read worked. While the monetary reward persuaded her daughter to read the book in the short term, it was unlikely to facilitate the motivation to read, which must feel like a choice and unpressured. Decades of research have shown that paying people to do things they love undermines their subsequent motivation. And paying them to complete tasks they do not enjoy, thank you, keeps the motivation tied to rewards so that they are less likely to value the activity and choose to engage in it on their own. The belief in rewards as an effective motivator is a myth. Other strategies are more likely to facilitate long-term motivation. Rewards are a simple fix that is likely to backfire. Wendy something, I can't read, Longmeadow, Massachusetts. The writer is Professor Emeritus of Psychology at Clark University and co-author of Motivation Mythbusters, Science-Based Strategies to Boost Motivation in Yourself and Others. Okay, that's an important part of the story there, right? But can we get a microphone? I should have asked for this in advance. Would somebody like to walk around with the microphone? Thanks, Peggy. Todd has the microphone. Thank you, Todd. It should be on. All right. So just hold it up, to your mouth when you talk. But what I want to do is first question, what are your biases? How does this story make you feel? What do you think? Not too much depth about what you think about it, but just trying to, are you cognitively aligned to it or not, right? So we got one over here, one up front here.
As a lifelong reader, I agree intentionally with the person saying that paying someone to read is not going to be as good as a motivation as if they enjoy it.
Is there emotion that comes in you? What did you feel when you heard this?
It's just thinking of all the happy times I had reading books.
Okay, some happiness and some disagreement. Good. Great.
My first feeling is I feel squeamish that someone would try to manipulate their child.
Joyce, and then if you'll come up here, Peg, we've got...
So I'm also a lifelong reader. I love reading. Probably read thousands of books in my life. I paid her to read 177 books, but she read those 177 books, some of which she still owns, and then she later read other books, much bigger books like the Harry Potter books. So I align with the parent. I have strong parental emotions in that I was trying to get my daughter to learn to read. She still does not love reading, but she does read. So I align with the parent.
So we've got almost an argument by authority in there, by personal authority. Over here to the, can you, okay, well, yeah, and then I don't want to leave you out because you've been.
Real quick.
No, go ahead. Yeah,
So,
no, you're good. Take your time.
So I was initially agnostic on it. I will say that I very much struggled with reading, and I probably would have done better if I had had positive incentives to read when I was younger, rather than just being called stupid, which unfortunately was my experience. Down in the body, as soon as they started saying, well, paying somebody to do something they love isn't, and I was like, wait a second, as an actress, I want to be paid. Even if I love it, I want to be paid. So then I started like arguing with their arguments. So that was my reaction.
Fantastic. Yeah. That's self-awareness. Yes, and over here, and then we'll come back to Sunny. So, yeah.
After teaching reading as a reading specialist for 20 years, I'm a little concerned about how this parent is trying to motivate the child. I would suggest that the parent let the child choose something they may be interested in reading and encouraging them by using positive language, not calling them stupid or just because you don't know this word, just skip it and go on to the next words.
So let me ask you this, because, and I appreciate your response, but it's a good example to sort of to pause and get to the heart of what we're really asking here, right? So you said you felt concerned, right? So what, if you were to describe that concern and an emotion, what would the feeling be?
Hesitant. I know the mother is trying to help the child and trying to encourage them with money, but that's a tangible thing, and what they need is a non-tangible reward for reading.
But so you had kind of a negative emotional response. We'll just put it that way for
Originally,
now, right?
yes. Yeah.
And then ideologically, you're in disagreement with this.
With
right?
paying somebody to do a
Yes,
task.
you have an ideological aversion. So both in heart and head, you are feeling some aversion to this.
Some, but not 100%, because nothing is ever 100%.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. No, we just want to know that's really what we're getting at. So if you'll get Sunny up here and then back here.
Well, maybe a little embarrassed with reading this, because recently I have 3 grandchildren. One's in college and 2 in high school. And I want them to read Heather Cox Richardson. So I sent it to them, and I said, let me know if you read it, I'll pay you $1. I haven't gotten any money. I haven't gotten anybody. I don't know whether they're reading it, but they're certainly not telling me. But
Yeah, inflation doesn't make that $1 worth much, Sonny. I think you have to, that could be the problem. Okay, back here, if you will, and then a couple in the back. I think Candace had her hand up.
So I started off being very happy. I agree with her premise. And then we get to decades of research, and I think I have a complicated relationship with that. So even though I agree with her, I'm like, decades of research, and research is good, except when it's really bad. There's a lot of poor quality research. So I think it depends on the day. I'm going to try to pay attention to my reactions in the future when I see something like that research, because I think my reaction is going to vary day to day.
So you're a little bit ahead of us in the process, but actually that's wonderful to hear somebody say, I started off this way and I had a shift even in the midst of reading it. It means there's already some instinctive openness to reconsidering your own biases, right? So that's great. So over here, yeah. I saw a couple of hands. Oh, there we go.
I have pulled in both directions. I despise behaviorism and the effects that it's had upon education. I have also observed that the idea of, well, you just make them love reading by talking about how much fun reading is, has resulted in an illiterate population. My son had tremendous difficulty reading, and you know what? When every single sound has to be painfully decoded for 5 years straight. Talking about how great the material is really doesn't make a difference. The experience just sucks. It's closer to going to the dentist.
Oh.
And so I'm seeing kind of a there's either paying people to do things they love, that was not the scenario here, or paying people, it'll make them love it. No, but it might make them develop the skill. So it opens the door to later things. So I feel like the writer is missing a major situation that appears to not exist for them at all.
Thank you. So the couple of things to point out here. A couple of opportunities with what you said. One is you'll notice how passionate we can become about something that we didn't care about 10 minutes ago. Right? You see what happens? An idea comes into our awareness, our noosphere, and suddenly it seems like the most important thing. And if I had had a different letter up there about a different topic, this wouldn't be meaningless to you. It would never thought about it at all, right? So, and we'll get to your hand in just a second. I just want to be sure and put it back up in a minute. The other thing I want to do is practice a little emotional empathy here, right? So the social part of emotional intelligence. So, because I didn't ask you to clarify what you were feeling, because you emoted it so well in your body language that we should be able to empathize with you. We should be able to feel. So what was the feeling here? What were you guys sensing when she was sharing her feelings with us? Anguish, frustration. Yeah, very good. And some passion too, right? There was a lot of emotion there coming from you, And just to be able to, again, step back and look at it, say, okay, this person is really having an emotional response to this. It's very meaningful, very deep, obviously very personal. Joyce had that to some extent herself when she was talking about how this benefited her child, right? So, okay, so let's do a couple more here. Oh, I should ask the folks on Zoom too. Thank you for that. Yeah, Terry, thank you for keeping me honest here. So let's just get two more in the room here. Where'd Peggy go? Right over here to your...
What about the fact that kids are different? They might work for some kids and it might not work for other kids.
Well, we've got to, let's get the microphone on you, okay? Because the folks on Zoom won't be able to hear you. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
What about the fact that kids are different? And it might work for some kids and not work for other kids. Family situations are different. The difficulty of learning is different. So there may not be an answer. There may be several right answers.
Okay, wow, that's an idea. That's an idea. But again, you're getting into the argument here, right? And so we really get pulled in to the argument rather than the process. Let's get Dick, and then we're going to turn to, and with my apologies to our friends on Zoom, I'm here looking at the slide, guys, and I just...
So I'm very, very sympathetic to the argument that, people should love reading and shouldn't depend on being paid for it. On the other hand, when I grew up, my folks gave me a weekly allowance, and the price for that weekly allowance is I had to wash the dishes and mow the lawn and things like that. And that actually built a kind of a discipline. And I still am good at doing those things, and I don't mind doing that. And then I think also about most of what we do in society that we call work is paid work. A lot of us would rather, if we had just free time, do something else. So being paid for something is actually does work in a certain. It doesn't always work, but it has a very practical role in society. So to me, the most important thing is to look at where does the pay part work well, and where does it not work well.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to grab the microphone so that I can walk up to the TV and see who's got their hand up on Zoom. Thanks, Peg. Okay, and Sonny, I think Dick and Mona are staying with you. Yes. And he said he likes doing dishes and doing the yard work. Take advantage. Okay, looks like Matthew has his hand up first. So Matthew.
Thanks. Two quick comments. One has to, thing I say is be careful what you incentivize, and when you set up a system of incentives. For instance, with my daughter, I didn't say it's important you get good grades. I said it's important that you learn what you need to learn to become a functional adult. And as far as with reading, my professional training is in behavioral optometry, which offers a way of helping the brain reprogram to make reading easier. We can always do things the hard way, but there are easier ways to do it. But it involves relearning how to organize things, and it's just a shame
let me just cut in a little bit here, because you're again sort of jumping in. Ken, I know you're a brilliant guy, so I think you've already expressed. I know you've already expressed your biases, your ideological bias with this, but what about the emotion that it evoked in you?
I do recognize that emotions get evoked. I just think it's hard to ask yourself the why when you're in an emotional state.
Okay, all right.
That I will yield back.
Okay, thank you. Lorraine.
Hi there. As I was reading through or listening to you read through the article or the letter, I was very neutral until the very end, and then I felt intense irritation and started arguing with the writer because her conclusion, or the conclusion, was that rewards don't work as motivators. And I'm thinking, well, you're talking about two different things. Rewards might not motivate emotions, but they certainly can motivate behavior. So I stopped listening and started paying attention to my own perception of this conflict, where how she shifted what she was talking about without realizing it.
Okay, thank you. And then let's see, Robin.
Yeah, hello there. This is basically just about something you said that sort of caught me by surprise a little bit and didn't entirely agree with. You at one point said, if there are no reasons, it's unreasonable, which is true. If there's no reasons at all, it's unreasonable. But the fact of the matter is there's all kinds of very unreasonable behavior that has reasons for it. There may not be good reasons, but they definitely have reasons. I just want to make that point, and of course I think it applies to UUA amongst others.
That's very true, but again, that's why we have to look at the form, or at least ask ourselves, does the what follow from the why? Right, so you can have reasons, but the reasons have to actually support what you're saying. That's the difference. But thanks for making that point. And right now I want to shift to the what's the what, and we'll start with our friends on Zoom this time, since I gave you the short end of the stick the last time. But what is the main point of this? In a sentence, please, not much more than that, but what is the writer of this letter trying to convince us we should walk away believing? What is the point of the letter? I'll look for hands. I don't see any hands up. By the way, there are right and wrong answers. But it's okay. It's okay to get it wrong. So, Roy, go ahead, Roy.
Yeah, I think that she's saying that if you're paid for learning, to try to get people to read, that they won't be interested in reading. It won't be effective.
Yeah, that's it. We don't have to overthink it, right? She's basically saying you shouldn't pay kids to read. Should not, right. You shouldn't. Yeah. I mean, we could say it a lot of different ways, but that's the point. Right? This writer disagrees with the op-ed that she read and says, I disagree. We should not pay kids to read. Why? This is harder. Okay. And yeah, thanks for putting it back up there. Okay, go ahead, Gail.
So I'm kind of thinking that it's not what you do, it is how you do it. So you might have a chore, maybe it's reading, maybe it's cleaning, maybe it's something that everyone does, and you might think, oh, that's difficult, that's boring, that's stressful, but how do you approach that? And of course, it's easier for adults to do that. Sometimes children, they don't understand, they just get frustrated. But adults, we all have to do chores, things that we don't like. So it's not what we do, it's how we do it. So if we approach it in a different way, then maybe we could find joy in it, or even a spiritual connection to it. Sort of being closer to nature if you're gardening, or even cleaning your house. So I'm not sure. That's how I'm kind of looking at this. It's not what, it's how.
Okay, all right, that's a counter argument for sure, and perhaps a good one. What I'm looking for right now is what are the reasons that this author, whether we agree with the author or the letter or not, what are the reasons that the author is suggesting we should share her conclusion? Yes. Okay. Let me turn the microphone back. Let's see. We've got Joe. Let me get to Joe online, and then we'll move the microphone around through here. So, Joe, go ahead.
I believe she had two similar reasons. One, decades of research show this, and two, I'm a professor in this area and I know this stuff.
Wow. That's pretty good. Those are two reasons, okay?
There you go.
So let's see, you had your hand up here, yeah?
I was going to say that the person here has the opinion that you just shouldn't pay anybody to do anything because they should want to do it, and that's the end of it. So say aye.
Okay, so people should our motive should do things they want to do, and there's research suggesting that this isn't a true motivator, and I'm an expert in the field, so I should know something, okay?
Can I say one, Todd? It's me, Lynn.
Oh, Lynn. Oh, okay. Wow, you've turned into a ventriloquist.
I've been watching you.
That's pretty good, Lynn. Keep it up. Keep it up.
She said it would backfire. It will backfire.
It will backfire is the reason. Okay. Research shows. Okay, I think we had one. Oh, did I see a hand over here? Oh, yes. Okay. Marga?
I'm reminded of Thich Nhat Hanh saying, chop wood, carry water. What that means to me is that everything that we do has value. If we attach a monetary value to something, it separates it from life, and life should be appreciated in full. That's what we want to transcend to in the end.
Very good. And I will say, this is something that happens in Kirkara all the time, right? Where we keep arguing the argument, right? And giving our opinion, because we get passionate about it. I mean, this is one of the most important lessons of this work, is just how engrossed we become with the unexpected thoughts that enter our awareness. And this is happening to us all day. There's never a time where you're alone without thoughts. You either have your own thoughts, you're listening to thoughts, you're reading thoughts, you're hearing thoughts. Unless you're asleep, maybe you're dreaming thoughts part of that time, but sleep's about the only time you get away. And think about, the emotional stuff that came up just around this thing that wasn't important to you before I started. It's a really, and this is what's happening with most thoughts. So yes, go over here to Lee, please.
Hello. I had a trained thought on this, and from my perspective, it's like two schools of thought. So on one side, you have the rich who tell their kids you'll get paid in proportion to the amount of books you've read, and on the other, you have kind of this Star Trek, what would you do if money didn't exist? How would you improve yourself? So I think it's somewhere in there.
Okay. So again, here we you see we're arguing the argument, which is fine. This feels really important right now. You're going to completely forget about it later tonight, I promise you. But it's really hard to engage the questions, right? The process. What are my biases? We want to jump right into the argument. What's the what? We want to jump right into the argument. What's the why? I want to jump. And then finally, we're going to get there right now. Does the what follow from the why? So let's evaluate this real quickly. Okay, we've come up with some pretty good premises. Thank you guys for pointing some of those out. The what in short, and we could phrase this a lot of different ways. You don't have to find a specific sentence in the letter, but just you should not, the argument here is why? Because there's research showing it, and because I'm an expert in this field and I know something about it. Was there another why? I think it seemed like there was another good reason in there too. Maybe not. Nevertheless, so with logic, if the premises are true and the premises lead to the conclusion, it is a valid argument. If the premises, I should say, if the premises are not true, or might be true, we don't know if they're true, it's a valid argument. If they are true, then it's a sound argument, if they support the conclusion, right? If the whys support the what, and the whys are true, then it's sound. If they're at least valid form. But again, the truth of it is an epistemological problem. And there was lots of questions raised here around whether or not this is true. The point wasn't really to figure out if the author is right or not. And there is some fallacy here. I mean, this author actually has some expertise in the field, so it's not a total fallacy. But it does give us pause that, one, we're not seeing the research, so we have to take the expert's word that that research exists and is interpreted correctly. If we really cared about it, we'd go look it up. I guarantee you nobody here is going to do that because we don't really care about this. We'll be caring about whatever the next thought is in a few minutes, right? So, but Joyce had a comment, and then we'll start to wrap up. Oh, one more here too. Wayne has one.
So I just have to, as someone background in psychology, using research on humans to say that this is true is problem. This is not physics, for instance. So, you know, the kinds of statistics that she's looking at, are we saying that there's a correlation? That children who are paid tend to be less likely to like to read? It's not like gravity. So I think that to use social science research, and this happens all the time in society, and say, because I read a study that says this, that is in fact true, is a fallacy.
Well, it could very well be. You're right. We don't know enough about this, but so far, really, all you've done is pose questions. We don't have the proof of whether or not this person actually knows what they're talking about. So we're just evaluating it on its own terms to help us through the process. I mean, I would say that if you paid your daughter to, was it 117 books? Did you say?
177 books.
107. If your daughter read 177 books, whether or not she likes to read or not, that's a success.
Which could be true for my daughter. So what I'm saying is with social science, and we use social science research to validate our what? To validate our logic. We often do not go along with that. The issue, the statistics, the margins of error, what is it, a correlation? I mean, so that's the problem in the study, therefore this is a fact. And we have to be very careful when we're evaluating something as logic, the what is the what, to realize that in fact some things that are posited to us as fact are not fact.
Well, I think that's true. And that again goes into sort of the epistemological question of how do we know? And I personally kind of agree with social science. I love social scientists, but they tend to be more philosophical than they are scientific. There are a lot of exceptions to that stuff, but a lot of times social science, what's called social science theory, is really social science hypothesis, right? And in science, you wouldn't make that mistake. So, okay, let's see if you can come over. Oh, okay, since you're right there, go ahead. And then Todd, if you'd put the Zoom back on, just so I can see if anybody has their hand up on Zoom. Yes, we do have one more there, so.
Oh, I was going to reference something in there because, could I read a sentence? No, I can't. It didn't take it off.
You can't see it? All right.
Yeah.
Todd, if you would put it up one more time so that you can read the sentence.
The motivation to read must feel like a choice and unpressured is an opinion that is being presented as a fact.
Okay. Not necessarily supported by the evidence, even if it is true. Okay, so if you'll go to Wayne here, and then we're going to get one more on Zoom, and then I think we'll start to wrap it up, okay? Oh, yeah. Maybe two more in the room here, but go ahead. Go ahead, Wayne.
So a key issue there is that she's jumping from reading to motivating people with money. So we could say, I guess everybody should be paid exactly the same salary because there's no motivation in money. So I think it's a big jump.
It is. Again, I think we could argue. So let me go to. Is Lincoln? Are you waiting for us? I see your name up there.
No, but Robin Edgar has his hand up, and there's nothing shown on the Zoom right now. Just so you know.
Oh, okay. I don't know if Todd can figure what's going on with the Zoom. That maybe we're not on Zoom right now, Todd, or we'd have to be to hear the sound.
Yeah,
You're on Zoom. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Go ahead.
One thing that struck me, and it's actually following up on just the last comment, I actually have to disagree quite strongly with one of the things that was said in the letter, is that it was stated that paying someone to do what they like decreases the motivation later. And I strongly disagree, and I actually speak from personal experience. I very much enjoyed photography in my late teens and early 20s, and to the point where I decided to become a professional photographer. And it certainly didn't decrease my motivation to be paid, and paid quite well. So, yeah, I just have to disagree on that point. I think that, in a certain way, in some cases, it might lead to losing a bit of motivation, but generally speaking, if it's something that you enjoy doing, you really enjoy doing, and someone's prepared to pay you for it, I don't think that decreases your motivation at all.
Okay, so what we have is another argument, right? That we've heard what's the what, that it doesn't necessarily decrease your motivation at all. I know from personal experience, because I was paid to do something I loved doing, and it didn't decrease my motivation. So there was a reason there, right? But again, we've sort of gotten into, so I think we'll just kind of back off here. That's a part of emotional intelligence too, is recognizing, we don't have to actually figure out what's true and what isn't, especially on this issue, because it's not that important. And somebody said different people are going to act, different kids are going to react different ways, right? So we're not all one being anyway. But we don't have to solve this. The real lesson here, I think, was that dynamic that you experienced, where it was very hard to keep up with this. This is just 4 questions, right? I'm not asking you to distill an argument and break it down to its basic premises and give it the correct mood and letters so that you can look at it so objectively you can't miss whether or not it's proper form. We're not going through that long, lengthy, impossible process. We're just asking 4 questions. What are my biases? What's the point? What's the what? Are there any sound reasons? What's the why? And do those reasons support in any way the argument? And this argument was supported to some degree by the premises. Doesn't mean it's true, doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's the final answer. But the point for us is that if we just go through this process, train ourselves to go through this process just a little bit, rather than jumping right in, we hear it and we have the emotional reaction. And this is the problem with the world right now, right? We hate each other because we hear things that people say that we disagree with. That's what's going on right now. And it's almost like a right. Well, they said this. You said this. Yeah, I did. So what? It's America. Or Canada.
Hey, yeah. Todd, we have another person. Catherine had her hand up.
Okay, well, let's go to Catherine, and then I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. Go ahead, Catherine.
Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I think everybody was taking this to extremes, because in reality, this was a letter to the editor, just casting doubt on the conclusions of the person that wrote the original letter, which was that she needed to get her daughter to like reading. And she thought that one of the ways to do that would be to pay her to read. We have no idea whether it worked or not, but considering that the author of the letter in response to that was just casting doubt on the conclusion. And also, with respect to the qualifications, most letters to the editor, you have to put in what you do and what your experience was with respect to that. That's not necessarily a statement of why you should believe her. It's just a statement of qualifications.
Well, true, but in this case, the qualification. Yeah, no, but in this case, the qualifications actually added to the weight of her argument. So, and you get that frequently in letters to the editor, where somebody says,
yes,
"I'm speaking from a place of expertise." Yeah. But my guess is that because this particular writer, this is a guess, obviously has a passion for this issue, right? This is somebody who studies motivation, read this article, probably had an emotional tirade. He said, "I'm writing a letter right now, and I'm gonna set the record straight." So this is what happens, right? We get these ideas that come into it. We're constantly bombarded, and becoming emotionally intelligent by being aware of ourselves enough to determine, am I going to back away from this, or am I going to just dislike somebody because they said something I disagree with? That's ultimately what this is about, having integrity with ourselves and being able to live in a world as more tolerant people. And I think this process has worked really well. It's a distillation of a very ancient practice that makes logic accessible to all of us. So I appreciate that. Todd, did I have another slide? I can't remember. I think it was just a blank. It reminds me of something, though. The blank. Is that the blank? Okay. Okay, so here's what I want to do, because obviously a lot of you are emotionally upset. My empathy tells me that you need some work. You need some work tonight. So, actually, no, you're pretty happy bunch, and I think a lot of you got the point. But what's that? Wine might work, yes. But I have another technique that's a pretty good one. It's one you can do any place. And again, as I say, Lynn often plays a special piece of music toward the end of a group, which really can help shift your consciousness too. But let's say you're in a state where you're really upset about something, or any other sort of negative emotion. By the way, most of the emotions are negative. Of the primary emotions, there's only one that's truly positive. That's joy. Otherwise, in most schematas anyway, the primary emotions are fear, anger, sadness, surprise, and joy. Surprise can be both, right? You can be shocked, or you can be joyfully surprised. But so there's a lot of negative emotions. In negativity, probably we evolved negative emotions because they're more likely to make us averse to things that are hazardous to our health. But to be able to shift from the emotional, these negative emotional states, especially if we don't want to react in a way that we'll regret, requires us to be able to self-modulate, to control our actions, but more importantly, shift out of that emotional state, self-regulate. And something that anger management does, which is pretty good, is just breathing. And so the technique that I like to use is to breathe in deeply and say to yourself, release, and exhale to the count of 5 backwards. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, hold it for a second, release, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, release, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Do it on your own. And that is the Kakaran way. Thank you. I think this concludes, does this conclude things? So I can tell folks goodbye right now for today? Hey, this concludes our first historic day ever of the NAUA Yearly Summit. Thank you. Thank you, everybody on Zoom and everyone who's live streaming with us as well. Enjoy your dinner or whatever else you're going to do this Friday evening. Yay.